Alright guys, I wanted to make another video with my 440i. This time I'll show you the high pressure fuel pump upgrade that I'm doing. I bought a pump that is the same pump used on the Toyota Supra and the M340i, and it's a good upgrade for those of us that have the first generation B58 engine. So a lot of people have asked me how to find one, what the differences are, and how to install it, and I'll go into all of that now. Now let's talk about our engine, what we have, and what's going in. So this is our stock high pressure fuel pump. All I did was remove the engine cover, and then there's this little sound deadening on top of it, but it's very easy to access for anybody that's seen N-series engines that have the high pressure fuel pump under the intake manifold. This is a lot easier to install, and it's a lot simpler design. It's mounted directly on the head. The cam follower is right on the cam, so there's no like extra moving components, no auxiliary rollers or anything needed for it to run. So definitely a nice upgrade for the Gen 1 B58s. And then this is the pump that I have that's going in. And people call this the TU pump because it's the same pump used on the B58 TU engine. But the one that I bought is actually from an X2 16i. So this is off of like a 3-cylinder crossover, basically, and it has a stronger fuel pump than ours. But anyway, this is used on a lot of different vehicles. Like I said, it's the same one from the Supra and the M340i, but it's also the same pump on the new 330i, a lot of the new 40i, like X3, X4, X5 models, and even like the B48 and the B38 engines. This is the same pump used on those. So I'll put a link in the description where you can go on Real OEM and see all of the vehicles that use this same pump. I actually had to buy mine from Germany because they don't sell the 3-cylinder models here, and the models here that do have this pump are still new at this point. But in the future, like if you guys are watching this in a couple of years, I'm sure there will be a lot of G20s and other models getting parted out on eBay. So if you want to find it there, I'll show you the part numbers you need to look up. This is the BMW part number, 1351-863-1642. And if you want, you can look up just the last 7 digits, 863-1642. This is the actual unique part number identifier for the fuel pumps. The 1351 at the beginning is for like a family of components. So a lot of parts start with that, but sometimes different BMW dealers or different people that are selling the pumps only list them under the last 7 digits. So look up both if you're trying to find it. The other part number is the Bosch part number. And for those that don't know, this is sold by Bosch, or made by Bosch and sold to BMW and Toyota. So this is their internal part number. It's the middle one. Again, sorry, it's hard to read. This is really reflective. But it is 02615205221. So the top number is just like a build date, and the bottom number is a serial number. Those aren't really relevant to us, but you can look up that part number. Or I don't have it on here, but I'll try to show a picture. The part number that Toyota uses is 23021-WAA01. So that's the one that they use for the part number on the Super pump. So all 4 of those part numbers work. Unfortunately, you can't order it directly from Bosch. So if you buy it from BMW, they mark it up to about $1,000 to $1,300. If you buy it from Toyota, they mark it up to about $800, I believe. So if you can find one from Toyota, it's usually cheaper, but also harder to find since they have a lot lower volumes on the Supra. Or you can do what I did, buy it used, and they're less than $600, sometimes less than $400. But it can take a while to get here from Germany if you do order it internationally. Hopefully, again, like I said, in the future, you guys can get them a lot easier in the US from cars that are being parted out. So the only difference is really that these are designed to run at a higher fuel pressure. The new pump runs at 5,000 PSI or 350 bar. Ours runs at 200 bar or 2900 psi, and luckily we have a fuel pressure regulator in our stock fuel system that can reduce the fuel pressure coming out of this pump and keep it at a safe 2900 psi. So all I'm going to do is install this, basically bolt it right in, and the only thing is this harness right here needs to be extended because you see like the connector faces the opposite way, so make it a little bit longer so it can still plug in. And then I'm just going to run my stock or my stage 1 boot mode tune to make sure that the fuel pressure stays steady and everything runs as it should. And then hopefully in the future I can start increasing my ethanol percentage. So I'll go ahead and show you guys how to install it now. Alright guys, I've moved everything out of the way that I need to access the fuel pump, and then just kind of laid them back in place so I can walk you through the process. The first thing you want to do is remove these cowl covers. There's one on each side, and the way to do that is across the top. There are 3 screws, they're 10 mils, and all you want to do is kind of like rotate them 90 degrees. If you use like a socket wrench, you can do it easily, and then you'll kind of unhook it like that. So just to show what you're working with, this is the hook that's kind of like, it hooks underneath this upper cover, and all you do is twist it 90 degrees and it unhooks. So you don't really need to unscrew it, just twist them 90 degrees so that this will release. You do that on both sides. Alright. And then you have these rubber caps that you want to kind of just fold out of the way. I believe it has like a little push pin like this somewhere around there, but I broke mine, so mine freely moves. So you can just fold it out of the way like that. Then you have this long gasket that goes across the 2 strut towers, and all it is doing is kind of being wedged onto this metal bracket. So all you have to do is slide it out, basically like it'll be pressed in. And when you slide it out along this rail all the way around, it'll pull out. The other thing to keep in mind is this black wire is tucked into the front. So what you need to do is kind of pull this back, like, you know, just fold it back all the way from edge to edge to pull the wire out, and then leave it in the engine bay, and you can just remove the gasket. Then the next thing you want to do is remove the actual strut brace. Up top there are these 2 dust caps that you can remove pretty easily with a trim tool, and then inside those holes you'll see 2 pretty hefty 16 millimeter bolts that you need to remove. And then on each strut tower they have like the reverse Torx bolts that need to be removed. What I do is use a 13 millimeter socket, like a triple square socket like this. This is a 14 millimeter triple square, and it bites onto it perfectly. Just be aware that both of those bolts are in very tight. They're actual, you know, kind of structural bolts for this strut brace, so you'll either need a breaker bar or an impact wrench or something to actually break them free. It probably won't come out with just a regular socket wrench. So get that off, and then you remove the strut brace like that. Get it out of the way. And then the last thing that you need to remove, well, the second to last thing, is this cover. There are 3 10 millimeter screws on this side and 4 on this side. The one that I almost forgot is all the way down in this corner. And then there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. And then that last one is 7. So pull those out of the way and make sure you watch out for this vacuum line. You don't want to pull up on this and damage it. So kind of slide it forward to get it out of the way. Then you can put that to the side. And then the last thing you want to do is remove the sound insulation or heat insulation, whatever it is. Let's see if I can do it with one hand. And yeah. So this is my setup for actually removing the fuel pump. What I did was put a shop rag under each of the hardline connections that I was going to need to remove. So I put one under this high pressure side of the pump, one under the low pressure side, and then one on this fuel rail, and one under this fuel rail. And you just kind of like slide it underneath and make sure it's really tucked under there and covering as much as possible underneath the connections. And then you'll take a 17 millimeter box wrench and slowly back it off. And as you back it off, fuel will begin to come out. I only had a little bit actually come out. It wasn't too bad, but just make sure you're ready for it. It is under pressure sometimes, like this side from the low pressure side can be like 70 to 80 plus PSI. And then on this side, like I said, it can be 2,900 plus PSI. So you definitely want to be careful and make sure there isn't any fuel like squirting out. But if you unscrew this extremely slowly, it'll actually just seep out. So if you back it off, see fluid coming out, let it set and let the fluid drain a little bit, and then continue backing it out until it's all the way off. And it's just kind of like a ball seat connection in the fuel pump. Same on this side, slowly back it off. And then when the fuel starts draining out, wait. When it's done, pull it the rest of the way out and remove the connection and let the rest of the fuel come out. This one is very flexible because it just has like this rubber grommet right here. And then the low pressure fuel coming from the fuel tank is just this braided flexible hose. So you can pull it out pretty easily, but watch this connection under the coil pack. You can remove the coil pack if you want to, or just like slide it backwards and around it. But make sure you don't pull it straight up because you might damage that connector. On this side, the hard lines are pretty hard to move. So you also need to remove the lines at the actual fuel rail. So once you remove those two and that one, then the fuel rail will come out, or the fuel line will come out. Then you need to remove this connector, and this piece slides straight back, and then you push it in. So when it's all the way installed, it's like that. And you're gonna unclip it, pull it out, push it in, and then slide the connector off. And then again, this is the connector that we're gonna be extending for the new pump. All right, and then after you get all that done, you have two T30 Torx that you need to back off. The recommendation is you do like a half turn on each side and kind of go back and forth just to make sure the pump backs out straight, because there's a piston underneath here and you don't want it to be cocked because it can damage the piston. So you'll back it off slowly on both sides to help it back off straight, and it'll slowly push itself out. You'll actually see it start creating a gap to the valve cover as you back it out. So do that. It's a little bit tedious, but you'll be happy you did. So I have the fuel pumps out. This is the stock fuel pump. This is the TU pump. And I have some calipers because some people were asking me for measurement. So we'll take some rough measurements on what the differences are. So first one's the diameter. It's about 22.5 on the old pump. And on the new pump, it's about 24. So about 1.5 millimeters wider. At the mounting location, let's see, it's about 35. This one's about 34.7, so those are about the same. And then the length of the piston, this is going to be extremely rough, but it's about 22.25 versus 23. Maybe 23.5 versus 22. Yeah, so 22 versus 23.5. So about 1.5 mils longer and 1.5 mils wider. Two other things I forgot to mention. So first of all, when I removed the fuel lines, I just wrapped them in the shop towel, so that way if it continues to leak, it'll pick it up. The other thing is, this is the cam follower. I wanted to measure this as well, but my calipers can't get in there and I can't get it out. It's really slick. Obviously there's a lot of oil in there to keep it lubed up while it's rolling over the cam, and I'm not really that eager to pull it out, but for everybody's reference, I am going to be reusing the regular cam follower that came with this car on the new pump. So if your new pump comes with a cam follower, take that one off and reuse the one that came with this car and it's already running on the cam. It'll be mated perfectly. Here's the new pump mounted up. You can see everything fits just like the stock one. The first thing I did was grab some 5W40, and I'll show on the old pump. I just rubbed it on the surface of the piston and like all around on the springs. Since this is going on your valve train, it needs to be lubricated. You really don't want any metal to metal contact in there. So just to get it started, I just dipped my finger in oil and rubbed it on the surface. Then I screwed it in, again the exact reverse of removal. I hand tightened both sides and then did a half turn on each side with my wrench and just slowly walked it down. It is very tedious, but just to make sure it goes in straight, that's what you want to do. So it all mounted up. There was no cross threading, no issues lining up the holes or anything. So now I'll remount the hard lines and then show you guys how I extend the actual wiring harness. And another thing I wanted to show, on the new pump, it's got a flat surface, versus on the old pump, it has this dimple. So if you're ever looking at pictures and want to know if you're looking at a Gen 1 B58 pump or a Gen 2 B58 pump, look for that smooth dome, and that's how you know it's the TU pump. Okay, so I have the fuel lines installed. As is typical, it was definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. Not impossible, but it required a lot of manhandling to actually get the hard lines on. And what I would say is, I saw on the engine and fuel system diagrams that the Supra and the M340i and Z4, all of those cars had a different hard line here and a different hard line at the back. And so all I can say is that there is a slight difference. It's like 95% an exact match, but it will require a little bit of effort for it to actually mount up. So the first thing that I did, the fuel line actually screws into that hole that you see. And so I disconnected the bracket and just kind of flipped it up for now. I'm going to run some logs and make sure I like it before leaving it in. So if it does look good, then I'll push the bracket down and kind of like make it work so that it installs properly. But I just needed to stretch it out a little bit more. It was like stopping short just up here. So I had to pull it down a little bit more, and the only way to do that was to disconnect that bolt. Then on the high pressure side, these two, I could not get, like this line and this line, I could not get to drop in easily. I could get these two to drop in, and I could get those two to drop in and bolt in fine, but this one was always sitting a little bit high. So what I did was mount up the high pressure side to the fuel pump, then leave both of these disconnected. This one particularly, I left it disconnected, and then this little grommet, I took it out. And then I used a little bit of manhandling and extra force to just get this to pop down into the fuel rail. And once I did that, everything screwed in fine. This side screwed in fine. I put the grommet back in before final mounting, but just to kind of, it like needed a little twist to get that line in. So when you install it, you'll see that this one, again, is just like, it's a little bit to the left. It's not quite centered. And so that's why it's easier to actually mount this one first. And then this is a straight shot. You just kind of need to pop it down with a little bit of extra leverage force. And then once you do that, they all screw in, no cross threading. It doesn't feel like there's any actual extra torque. It just, you can tell like it wasn't designed that way. You need to make it work. So take that for what it's worth. I also unclipped some of the coil packs to give me more room to mess with the lines and get it in properly without damaging anything. So that's what you see there. Here it is with the wires separated. You can see the loom is still there. I just kind of pulled it out from where it was folded over. And now what you're going to do is cut the wire. I want to cut it in line with this post. So right around here, and that way it'll give you enough room to work, and you can still access it easily to crimp everything, but you'll also have enough length of wire because you will need to strip it back a bit for it to actually be attached. And then whether you're soldering or crimping or whatever, you just want enough room to actually get in there and work. If you see, this is all the wire you get, so not a whole lot to work with. But yeah, cut the wire, cut the sheathing at about the same spot, strip the wires back, and then prepare to extend it. Alright, so here's the wires that I cut. You can see I just have the connector installed. This is the wire I cut on the connector side, and wire at the base. So all I did was kind of angle this, measure the length, and it was 6 inches. So I have 7 inches of wire that I cut and crimped. Also, I am using crimps, I'm not soldering. Just keep in mind, like, OEM repair manuals specify using crimps. Soldering on a signal wire can affect what readings you get. For this, it's not as critical because all you're getting is like power and ground, but I figure if it's good enough for an OEM repair for like a sensor or something, then it's good enough for this. So, and it's easy to do. And this is what I got. So I used black 18 gauge wire, just crimped it on with these butt connectors. Yeah, I mean, pretty simple. Now I just did the last 2 crimps, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned this whole bracket comes out, or at least unclips. So it's really tight to work in here, but I just realized I could pop it out to get a lot more room to get these crimps on. And all it is this tab, you got to push it out, and then this tab, you got to push it out, and just push it out gently and then slide it straight up and it comes off. So that's how it normally sits. Alright, so here's the final setup. Like I said, I just wrapped it in some friction tape. I ran the wire underneath the hard line to keep it a little more secure because it was sticking like really high up before. And yeah, feel free to like zip tie it to whatever you need to keep it secure, but this is the idea. Update, more than a little bit of trimming was needed. I had to cut a hole straight through the cover. You can pretty much see how high it sticks up. It sticks up above the fuel pump. So that connector needs a lot of clearance. And when I install it like this, it actually sticks up straight through here. Like you can see it almost sticking up above it. So you need to cut a hole straight through. Like I said, this is where the fuel pump is. This is where the hard line is. So kind of next to where the hard line would be. Start cutting that out. Work slowly if you don't want to tear it up, or you can probably just cut out a lot of material or even just leave the whole thing off if you don't want it. I just wanted to keep it, so that's why I did it this way. Also, I got this screw back in on the fuel line. I just shimmied it down a little bit and everything was able to line back up. So I just wanted everything to be as close to OEM as possible, so that's why I'm doing this extra trimming and work to make everything line up. You probably don't need it, but it'll help prevent rattles and extra noise and stuff in the future. Alright, here it is with everything reinstalled. Looks very stealthy, I think. The only thing that's obvious is this hole in the insulation where the connector used to come out right here. You know, you can tell that there's no connector there and that the fuel pump is facing the wrong way. So if somebody really knew what they were looking for, they could look at that hole and see it. Also, here's the new connector where it's sticking up. It's barely touching that top cover, but it's not actually putting any pressure on it, so I'm not too worried. And once you have the engine cover installed, I mean, obviously you can't see anything. So first start with the new fuel pump. Alright, so just went for a quick drive in the car. Unfortunately, my boot mode logging isn't working. None of the gauges are working, so I'm not gonna go do anything crazy yet, but I just kind of cruised around, did a quick lap around the block to see if it was performing as I expected, and everything's working great. The revs are smooth. Everything's good. I actually have burbles disabled, so it's pretty easy for me to tell if it's like backfiring or something while I'm driving around. That would indicate there's like some kind of fueling issue. Nothing like that. Idle holds smooth. You saw it took a couple seconds for it to actually turn over the first time, but now everything's good. If I turn it off, turn it back on, starts right up. So no issues at all. I would say it's performing pretty much the same as the stock fuel pump, and drivability is fine. It downshifts fine. Basically everything works. So if I do get a chance to do some wide open throttle pulls and log it with boot mode, I'll post those up in the description, but for now I'll just post up the video showing the install. If there are any questions or comments, feel free to hit me up or message me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.